Hi, and good afternoon, good morning to all of you. Myself, Kinjal Vora. I am marketing head at Drona HQ, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to each of you, our dynamic divas out here on this Women's Day, to come and share with us a journey that you have been through in the technology industry. Thank you for gracefully accepting my invitation, and come here and share with all the young women who out there who aim and plan to have a career in tech. So looking forward to hear from all of you. I'm very excited to hear you and can't wait to introduce our guest to the audience today. We have a very fantastic panel and a very widespread, diverse panel today with us. And let me start with Mridvika. Mridvika, Mridvika is a negotiator. Her day job is to negotiate with clients, job seekers, boss, and everyone else in between. And her night job is to negotiate with her 8-year-old twin boys, who are her most difficult stakeholders to work with. Mridvika has spent her career of 15 years across IT services, consulting financial services clients, edtech, and nonprofit fundraising in India and US. Prior to Shortlist, she was Director of Strategic Partnerships at Mindseed, an edtech startup, where she supported founders on raising Series A fundraise and led internal operations. She has spent 5 years at Teach for India, where she was an integral part of its scale up and led the national fundraising team. She was a senior consultant at Ernst& Young Financial Services office in New York, advising senior secondary mortgage industry clients. Mridvika has a bachelor's degree in computer science from Mumbai University and master's in information systems from Cali School of Business, Indiana University. Very warm welcome to you, Mridvika. Hi, how are you doing?
Thank
And
you so much, Kinjal, for that interesting introduction. I'm very glad to be spending my Saturday afternoon talking to all you lovely ladies and sharing my journey. Thank you so much.
good. Mritika, just one question to start off with. How has the pandemic affected recruitment and staffing, and how do you see the business blooming up today?
Yeah, through the pandemic we've seen the ups and lows, through the last year. When we just got hit by pandemic, the first 2 months were really brutal because the world went on hiring freeze, and if the world goes on a hiring freeze, a recruitment and a search business essentially comes to a standstill. However, we were able to survive because we had a portfolio of clients that were distributed across industries and sectors. So we had clients in education space, we had clients in nonprofit space. So that allowed us to float along. And I think around July, people realized this is how the world is going to be for the next foreseeable future, and we started receiving, the hiring mandates again. And since then, it's been no looking back. I think we've not been as busy as we were before the pandemic. So all in all, it's been good. It was unfortunate for the job seekers because, as you know, a lot of them were affected and had lost their jobs. But things are looking up, and I think we are on path to recovery now.
Nice, wonderful. Good to hear. I'll come back to you for a detailed journey. Let's introduce, next, I'm going to introduce Shruti. Shruti has been, hi Shruti.
Hi there.
Shruti is a leading woman in tech and has experience of over 15 years across business and technology, marketing, sales, product management, and also entrepreneurship. Today, along with being a mother of two preschoolers, Shruti bridges as a product manager between technical and business teams at CleverTap, a SaaS-based platform. She has been a senior product manager at Barnes& and Noble Education for more than 4 years. Shruti also co-founded Vista Solutions during her time at ISB and headed marketing and sales for the company, where she vocalized the concept of learning through simulation. Her diverse experience in industry makes her a true woman leader in technology. Shruti did her post-graduation from ISB with dual major marketing and strategy and holds a bachelor's degree in IT. Hi Shruti, tell us something interesting and start with something that we do not know about you.
That's such a fantastic introduction already. I'm already on cloud nine. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here on Women's Day. I love being here. Thing that doesn't come out in my LinkedIn profile is that I love to write for children. And I have a YouTube channel with my son. We just have fun and we put content out there for kids. And that's something I'm very passionate about and I enjoy doing.
Fantastic. Looking forward to more such content from you, Shruti.
Absolutely.
Next we have Seema Devedi. Hi Seema.
Hi there. Thanks for inviting me here.
Seema, with 15 years of experience in LVMH and currently working as a senior product manager at L'Oreal Digital Services Factory, Seema collaborates with beauty tech partners to bring the AR and AI enabled services. L'Oreal's beauty brands. She leads the AR partnerships for L'Oreal with social media giants like Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, and more. Seema has previously worked for more than 12 years for ERP projects, technical integrations, SharePoint portals, and buying and planning tools. She has also led project management teams for various industries like luxury fashion, apparel, building materials, and more. She manages end-to-end delivery, including budgeting, planning, vendor evaluation, vendor management, steering committee to ensure timely project delivery within cost and budget. Seema, quite an elaborate and interesting profile you have. Wow, AR and AI for beauty tech. Isn't that just you, Seema?
I was imagining I would not have to put on makeup here and just have a Zoom filter applies on you and you are ready for the meeting. So that is seriously the thing that we are doing. Like that's my current job description. We create, a way for girls like us, women like us to be able to simply try on makeup with the comfort of their home with their smartphone. You like that lipstick? Oh, I think I like the shade that Kinjal is wearing. I want to have the same shade. And that's something that we do, when making beauty accessible. And really, it's not about creating unrealistic beauty, those filters which you feel are not true to, but it's really about allowing makeup on yourself. So just the way you are, just adding that product and showing you how it looks on you. So that's simply we do. And it's really cool. Like everything in my phone, I have videos filled with us trying on our own products. Like when we develop new services, you're just like full of, trying new hair color, trying new lipsticks, trying new eyeshadow, those which you think that maybe I won't be able to know how to do that, but you can simply try on with a click of a button on your phone. So that's simply
Truly
what I do.
Truly fascinating and every girl's dream job. Interesting. Next, we have Trupti Purandare. Trupti, she is the head infrastructure and CISO at Godrej Housing Finance. And before that, she was a part of a senior manager information systems BPCL. She has 15 years of experience in enterprise IT solution design, SAP landscape management, digitization, infrastructure modernization, project management, stakeholder and vendor management, capacity planning, budgeting, and business continuity planning. Being a technology expert and having experience of working closely with businesses, she has performed the role of business analyst in multiple enterprise scale projects. She sees patterns where others simply see complexity. She believes that work must be meaningful and it must matter to you. It will matter only if you give chance to live out your own values. Hi Trupti, welcome to the interesting panel. Do share with us your journey so far, how you have been with BPCL Bharat Petroleum for more than 15 years now, kind of accomplishments that you achieved there, the projects that you took, and what are you currently doing?
Actually, the journey started with, as in, I always wanted to be a computer engineer. So soon after school and maybe 12th standard, it was inevitable that I would go to engineering. So did my engineering. After that, through campus recruitment, I got into Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. So that time it was kind of a norm that people would go for hardcore tech industries like Infosys, TCS, or there were many other options available. But somehow I landed up into hardcore manufacturing industry, oil and gas. And the journey has been interesting because then the number of women in that sector were pretty less, and we were one of these very few ones. And I used to work for a refinery, as in Mumbai refinery. So it was completely a different environment, right from soon after college getting into that setup. But what I like the most about that is the role was not just limited to technology. The role was not just limited to fine tuning or working on technology day in and day out, but it was about solving problems. So uh, there were various problems which were faced by maybe a maintenance section, or maybe operations, maybe finance, maybe contracts, procurement and contracts. So me, even though having specialization in technology, could interact with each and every part of the business, and that's what I enjoyed the most. And maybe that's what it kind of I enjoyed it so much that I ended up being there for a very, very long time. And I owe a lot to Bharat Petroleum for helping me build my career there. Because as I told you, it's more than 10,000 employees all across India, right from rural to the metro cities. As in, it's like you have humongous opportunity to learn, uh, a lot of exposure, and that's what I enjoyed the most. Uh, I learned a lot and did a lot of what do you call, apart from career, worked a lot on core, worked a lot on what I eventually want from my work life mixture. As in, slowly, the boundaries of work and life became as blur. And then you kind of really look into it, that what next now. So thought of bringing in the change, especially in the career front, because I thought that I was ready to take a plunge. So then I recently have got into another organization, which is Godrej Housing Finance. So I'm heading infrastructure there, and also playing a role of CISO. Uh, so whatever I learned for the past 16 years, it's time for me to practice here. It's time for me to mentor people. It's time for me to strategize on technology rather than worrying about which technology. It's more important what business wants rather than which technology. So the journey has been more from technology towards business now. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Nice. Good to hear you probably started with a lot of technology and over the period of years evolved into understanding and enabling businesses with technology. I think Mridvika has something similar kind of a story to share, the parallels that she draws from her role as a consultant at ENY and then fundraising for Teach for India. Mridvika, do you want to share your story?
Sure. Thanks, Kinjal. So, me becoming a computer engineer was almost like a flip of a coin because so I come from a family of doctors. So, in the times at least, then I think all of us were growing up. If it was not for parents telling you what to do, it was like what you looked around people choosing. So, people were either becoming doctors or engineer, and I was too scared to go into the field of medicine. So I said, okay, engineering seems to be another respectable option to take. That's how I flipped the coin and took engineering. And I did my engineering from Mumbai University, Thadumal Shahani Engineering College, and got campus recruited by an IT services firm called Hexaware Technologies. I was back in the day coding and testing, gathering requirements on mainframes and COBOL and JCL platform for a telecommunications client sitting in the US. So I think working in engineering for those 2 years probably just left me wondering how are these decisions made to change to bring about a change in a technology system. What prompts the business to sort of like, get the technology to sort of make these changes. So I was keen to sort of understand how business decisions are made, which is why I wanted to pursue my master's in information systems. So I went to the US, did my post graduation from a business school, and then got recruited by Ernst and Young. And as I joined Ernst and Young, I was working as a technology consultant, primarily advising secondary mortgage industry clients and financial services clients when two banks would merge, what systems have to stay, how the integration has to take place, what systems have to get retired, and I enjoyed all of that. And then soon. I started missing home and wanted to come back to India. And one of the reasons I think I had all the opportunities that I got, as I worked in the initial years of my life was primarily thanks to the kind of education that opportunities that I had gotten. And therefore, I wanted to work in the social impact sector that was equalizing access to education for all. And that's how I came across Teach for India, a non-profit organization. And I knew I couldn't be a teacher in a classroom because, it requires immense patience to do that. So I was looking for roles within the non-profit sector that allowed me to carry forward whatever I had learned over the years. So my role at Teach for India was that of a development manager, a fundraising manager, that allowed me to sort of draw parallels with what I was doing in consulting. So in consulting, I was managing clients and interfacing with them on a day-to-day basis. In a fundraising role at a non-profit, I was dealing with donors, grant makers, high net worth individuals. Over there also I was doing a lot of proposal writing. In Teach for India also I was doing a lot of grant writing and creating those donor proposals. And so there were a lot of parallels that I could draw in terms of the work that I was doing that made me successful in my role at Teach for India. And after having done that for about 5 years, I realized that I was again itching for a startup stint, and wanted to learn how fundraising essentially happens for edtech companies. And so I joined this edtech company called Mindseed that was at the time raising their Series A fundraise. So at Teach for India, while I got the opportunity to raise funds from international philanthropies, foundations, high net worth individuals, at Mindseed I was able to assist and support the founders in raising their Series A fundraise from private equity and venture capital firms. And that was a great experience. And then, the role became a little internal focused, where I was managing internal operations with HR, finance, school operations reporting into me. And I wanted to have a component in my role that had external stakeholder management experience, which is why I was looking for another role. And shortlist happened at that time. And what drew me to shortlist was obviously the people that were running it, the global exposure that I would get, but at the same time, the overall vision of the organization was, how do we match potential with the opportunities or jobs that they love doing? So we've all seen, sometimes the companies they hire based on pedigree on the resume, or blue chip companies on the resume, as opposed to hiring for potential. And so that was the vision that resonated with me, because I've sort of had my own winding journey across different sectors, and the opportunities that I got at every single place sort of brought me to the place where I am today. So here I am working with Shortlist. I manage their global search business. Today we have presence in India and Africa, and I'm happy to be sharing more about how we navigate through this. Thanks,
Very
Kinjal.
interesting, very interesting, very vast range of experience from whole programming all the way back to Series A fundraising and to leading a search profile for the shortlist. Very interesting. I think from into very vast experience, Seema has a lot to share on various different projects. Seema, your experience has been into various different projects from digitalization to AR, AI projects for L'Oreal, even before that with Louis Vuitton, some interesting projects. And at here in India, you were also part of the ERP planning, and that was completely different. How did you manage a complete shift from, say, ERP to luxury fashion, beauty tech? What is your story all about?
And so for me, just to tell you, I would say, how was I inspired to get into engineering was, I think, back in the school. My principal, I would say, I would definitely tell that she was one lady who inspired me, because I was really shy at school. But the way she built the confidence in me, today there are so many coaching, you when you're doing that 10th standard, you have a coaching stage where you want to know which is the right career path for you. Back in our days, when I in 1998, 99, that did not exist. But somehow that my Our Lady, Mangala Soni, she had this thing in her, the vision in her. She told me, I think I see you well, doing computer engineering, like going into engineering. I had absolutely no idea what engineering is at that time. Really, our curricular is defined in a way: you want to clear your 10th standard with good results. You want to go target a science stream for your 12th. And I said, okay, I think you are inspiring me, because I never thought about it. I don't even know. I was thinking maybe I will do medicine, maybe I'll do engineering, maybe teaching. You don't know really what you want to do. So okay, I said, she has something in her. She has seen me growing, like I was in the same school for my whole education. So I said, okay, I will keep this in mind, and I'll come back to you and tell you if I take engineering. So it happened like it was supposed to happen. So I got into, thanks to women quota, I would say, I was able to get into the first round of engineering, being on merit. Things were very different back then, and was I would be proud to say that I was able to fund my own education. I did not depend on my parents to say, Ki, this is we need to spend lakhs of money for your education. So I said, my dad, don't worry, we'll get education loan. I know you would be able to fund it, but I want to be on my own. So I know that I have to repay that loan. So which is my responsibility to find the job, like finishing my college. So I was most of you girls, I got my placement through engineering college, and I started with Larsen and Toubro Infotech. So and there, of course, you are like I did electronics engineering, so I was not really as well versed with IT and stuff. But you are in an IT company, and then you are like out there navigating yourself, like what you really want to do. And then of course things are like you are destined to say, okay, now you go into this BU which is doing ERP. You actually don't know whether Java is better or doing an ERP career is better. So we said, okay, luck has brought you here, be it so. I will be there. But then honestly, in the training I learned that I cannot code. I mean, I'm not someone meant to code. So there, in the ERP stream, we really had a way where we could actually do administration. So I was really doing administration of that ERP tool, which is really was supposed like written in rock that it is meant for boys. I don't know why. They were like, when I started, we had projects where there were night shifts. So they said, okay, what would you do here? Like a girl doing administration of an ERP, because you have to do maintenance jobs, you have to be, supporting client 24/7. And most of the times you have to end up doing night shifts. I said, I understand that. Perhaps I wouldn't be able to be part of this project, but maybe I will find my way. So that is what it is. Like within 2 years, I got my first opportunity to go on a client role, like go visit the client teams. So it just inspires to say that, okay, within like first 2 years, you're able to get your first on-site trip, and you could actually see the client themselves, because back in offshore, you don't know how business is happening, unless you actually see the client and be on there on the floor. You see how things are actually happening, and versus the bubble you have, like the offshore teams create a bubble, like, okay, this is the delivery, you have to do that. But then you actually interact with client to understand what is real business need, and how what you are doing contributes to the whole picture. And so it was more about, okay, really building about your career in ERP. I said, okay, I feel like I have a way where I want to evolve into management, really going to not just doing the technical part. So that's where I got this opportunity, which wasn't very easy. Like I had to compete with my colleagues of mine to get this role where I was supposed to replace someone and come to France. That's really was a very difficult decision, because you had to move for a longer duration, like really leave your country, come on a bigger project. And I am not coming alone, because I was just about to get married. So my point was like, is my husband ready to be able to really come with me? And so that was like one big decision, we would say, we took in life, like a bet. Of course, thankfully we were young. I would not be able to take the same bet now, but there we took that bet. He said, I think you should go for it. I would follow you. Don't worry about what I would do in terms of my career and my role. So you see, like, where I am, this like the huge role is him, because he has like sacrificed kind of his career at that time to say that, don't worry, I'll figure out myself, you go. And then he joined me, leaving his role in India, and trying to navigate through France, because in France you don't know language, you can't do much. So it's really important to know the language. So first thing he did, he was like, I will take lessons. You do your take this new role, which was challenging, because you're leading like a delivery role with being in the client location. And I had to really orchestrate like delivery management for a new transformation of an ERP. And you had to do like the fact that you are coordinating with 100 people at a time. You had a strict deadline, like you had to deliver versions, but then also make sure that it's bug free, it's having its whole, like, all the documentation is there, you have your stakeholders who are aligned, and they are going to take those versions. So it was very interesting. Like back if I remember, when I remember, I was like 28, 27. I think I got a great opportunity. Sometimes I compare myself to that 10 years old self, and I say that, babe, you were like really had much more confidence. Sometimes we keep questioning ourselves, like we have that imposter syndrome, but we forget that you are here because of whatever you have done in the past. So I would say, women, like, we don't have to keep questioning ourselves. I think we are every day you are doing things, and you keep believing in yourself, which is really more important, to keep reminding, like, yes, you are there because you have done things. And keep trusting in yourself, go push it hard, which is so that is where the thing happened. Is I was there for 2 years in France within this role. But then I started to realize that things are not easy, and maybe I want to no more be a part of an IT consulting, and I want to kind of be a part of the organization. Because at Lafarge, at this role there where I was in France, I couldn't take decisions, certainly because I was a consultant. So you felt like you want to cross that barrier where you could be owning certain decisions, because you can see clearly that they make sense for the business. So how I can be part of the organization. And honestly, when I got the opportunity at Celine, it's a part of LVMH group, it's a luxury brand. I did not even know that Celine existed. Of course, we all know LVMH, we all knew Louis Vuitton, but Celine is a niche brand. They were not really about marketing and communication. So I was like, okay, I know what is this brand about, and why are they looking for someone my role? It was very weird, because I was like, I don't even know what would I do in that role. And there was a whole risk, because the visa that I was supposed to, I wanted to continue living in France, but they had to really process the whole visa thing for me because I was not able to use the same visa that I came for. So it was a bit like, okay, I said, I will leave my previous company. I'll take this bet and we will see how it turns out. And, things happened. Like, I did not know French. They told me, don't worry, but you have to learn because that is your, the condition that we are, accepting you will learn French. I said, don't worry, you give me lessons. I would put my best to, learn French. And here I am, like, when I speak to my colleagues at L'Oreal, they will be like, how do you know very so good French? Because a lot of times Indians, when we want to, even if we move to another country, we are always surrounded by, which is our comfort, of course. I mean, there's no wrong feeling about it, but we do not try to, mix as much as in the culture. I said, honestly, if I had not been gotten that job, I would have been in a situation where I'm comfortable speaking my English and do not really want to learn the French language, but it really helps in terms of integrating the culture. I think as Indians, we all have lived in different cities, even in India. It's almost like going to a new country because be it what, you have to know a bit of the local language, Marathi or Kannada. If you're living in Bangalore, you do learn that. So I see, like, the same way. I think we are adaptable. We do that, and I did that. So I learned French, and so at Celine, it was really about how I am, now owning my budgets, owning the roadmap. And what I see, the opportunity was transformation in terms of really bringing the digital transformation in the company, because they were doing things in traditional way. Fashion, luxury fashion is quite, the way it's a big monster. It is now really taking so much. It's slowly moving in terms of, becoming agile and digital. So I said, okay, I'll take this bit opportunity to, push myself and see how I can bring, an agile transformation. So starting with small projects, like, we did not have Office 365 at that time. We did not have SharePoint, where we said, okay, we'll have SharePoint. We'll see how we can start moving, in this space. And then from there, little projects that exposed me to B2B, B2, not exactly B2C, but B2B. And also I said, I'm really excited about digital. So how I can really orient my career towards digital, like I have done a lot of ERP, have done a lot of B2B, B2E. I want to really see how I can, really touch consumers through my ideas. And that's where I think the name that came to, my mind was L'Oreal, because L'Oreal it has been a leader in terms of digital transformation and really about how they do things. And I would say I was lucky to forget this opportunity where I am currently. It was the whole team was just created when I joined. They acquired a new startup called Modiface that does augmented reality. And when we asked the question, we would say, what is L'Oreal doing about augmented reality or selling makeup products? And then you're talking about augmented reality and technology. So it was a bit crazy from when people looked from the outside. But we had like, what I would say, what we were driving towards is a clear vision that says, okay, today the challenge that consumers have, like, it was because of a need, a pain point. When I'm buying lipstick online, I don't know today exactly how that shade looks on me. You see those models, but you're not really able to identify with them. So how would you make sure that that shade looks good on me? That's the real need. So that's where the vision was, that we will use this technology, bring it to every point. And my role has been doing that. Like, I'm really seeing how I can bring this technology. We brought it to all our brands' websites, to our brands' apps when you're buying in store. But then not just that, because people are also, buying on Facebook or Instagram or even on Google. So how we can bring it everywhere. So whenever they are looking for a product from a brand, they would get the same experience. So if you're trying the lipstick, you will have the same shade as it is you're swatching on yourself, like on trying any in the store, in physical world, and then in versus in this augmented reality world. And we keep doing things like we do sometimes put a real lipstick versus an augmented reality, and keep doing games. Okay, tell us which one is the real, and people are not able to guess that. So that is where the power of technology is, that they don't really find the difference between which is the augmented reality version and which is the real version. So from there, today we are taking this step ahead in terms of how and because of pandemic, things have changed. Like, the digital transformation has just accelerated. And I think this, you all girls have also seen this in your different roles, that today there is no other way for companies to migrate these crises versus being digitally advanced. I think Indian companies, we are doing great in India. Like, we kind kind of also have a digital native approach, but which is not the case. Sometimes if we imagine Europe, it's still taking time for people to buy online. It's not exactly the same, when we are buying on Flipkart or Amazon, the accessibility. Here it is still, we are trying to create that, reach to those consumers. So it's a continuous challenge. It's interesting, and for me, I'm looking forward to really seeing how things that I work on bring value. So it's all about consumers. It's all about bringing value and solving a need or a pain point.
Very, very vast, diverse experience that you have shared with us, your whole journey, Seema. Very interesting, yes, how you are imagining stuff and how you have evolved and used technology and adopted it into a reality, a virtual reality. That brings me to Shruti. A very vast experience with you as well. You have moved into from a tech role, done your master's, and again moved to an entrepreneurial role, and then product management, a role which is like a bridge between a technology and the marketing team, a juggle. What is your journey like? Do share some insights from your journey.
I think the beginning is very similar for all of us. So I'm also an engineer, and went. I was also mass recruited into Syntel, and then I went to TCS. So I spent similar to all of, quite a few of you here. Actually, spent about 3 years in that services. I was also in COBOL, and from there I went to ISB for my MBA. Did the year there. In ISB, I started up actually with a partner, and I was clear that I wanted to start up in ISB, and then so that I did that for about a year. We did simulations. This was basically while we were at ISB, we saw that simulations were a great way to learn, especially very like concepts that most people found dry, like ops simulations, right? So things that were hard to learn just by the book. So we started that, and unfortunately, that didn't go very well for me. So about a year down the line, I quit the startup, and I joined this corporate strategy, CEO's office kind of role at CMS, which is like an Indian conglomerate. I spent about, I think, 3 years there in the CEO's office, working on different strategic initiatives. Like there was a printing division at CMS. So I'd be doing costing and pricing, like pricing sort of scenario analysis for them. And then I did resource management. I built up a resource management team there. So it was very, very different pockets of projects because it was like the CEO's office. So that was really interesting. And with that resource management sort of stint, I realized that I do like designing systems and figuring out what should go into systems. So very strangely, that sort of started my journey into product management. And I got into an ed tech role with an Indian startup called Loudcloud, which got acquired by Barnes and Noble. So that was my real first product management role. Did that for about 4.5 years. And after that, now for the last 2 odd years, I've been in CleverTap, again in product management. So broadly B2B product management experience. So that's been now about 6+ years of product experience right now. So very quickly, that's wrapping up my experience.
Interesting. A very quick and a crisp experience that you have shared with us. That brings me to some questions that I have according to your profiles, something which the young audience, the young women who are joining into the tech industry, if they would like to follow your footsteps, some questions that they will have. Trupti, your career in tech requires a constant learning, I guess, and especially when I see your career, you have been learning a lot from field as well, and enabling it with technology. What is your take on what kind of resources have helped you in your journey so far? How do you keep yourself abreast with what is happening and towards a career role in a infrastructure head or a CISO, how somebody who is planning to go or who loves to go into something like that should aim for?
To be very frank, Kinjal, it's not something that I planned. Now that the place that I am in, I will not say that I had planned for it, or I had that as a goal, or it was a target. No, not really. It's something which is, I think, uh, your position or your success is just a end result of something that you do, and that something matters. So whoever is going to, whoever wants to be something in life, or the young girls, or the girls who are studying now and want to do something big in life, what I will say is this, that the way typically we Indians, the way we are brought up, our childhood, or even our very important years, which are like when we are in college, those are like really important years for a person to develop the individuality or the personality, right from school. But as you grow into college and all, that becomes much more evident in you, as in you actually shape up your personality. And I feel that we give a lot of importance to what we want to do in future, how the future is going to look like, where I want to be, how much I want so and so thing. What my advice to all the people who are in that stage is, stop thinking about future. I think one should give a lot of attention to what their core is, what their attitude is, or what their strengths are. I think that is the base of, that is the pillar of, what you are going to be 20 years hence. So I never prepared for being a leader, or I never prepared to be, heading a team or something like that. I think what I focused mainly on was, identifying who I am. uh, Back then we didn't really have good tools to understand that. Now we have even tools, digital tools, to understand what you are. We feel that we are strong in certain domain, but in reality, that's what is your perception. But one should have a good feedback system in life, where you actually know, maybe through your mentors, or maybe through your close family, through your friend circle, or if one is open to the feedback, one understands, that, where you really good, where you are really good. uh, so in my career, in the later stage though, I started finding that, what are those areas of strengths that I possess. So my personal favorite is Gallup, Clifton Strengths. It's my favorite. It doesn't necessarily have to be favorite of others, but there are these tools and technologies available. Try and understand, what you are, what is your powers, what are your powers, and what is your strength. And I think, uh, with that self awareness, what is there in your hand is good choosing. I think, like, when while selection of a college, or while selection of a company, selection of a role, selection of projects, selection of technology, there are always these Y junctions, T junctions. There are always 3 forks, 4 forks, and you got to choose, right? And the more self-aware you are, the better the choosing is, and the better the choosing is, the you actually then reach more towards what you want to be. So even though it sounds very generalist kind of a answer, but uh, I apply that logic everywhere, to be very frank. So it's that simple for me.
What about you, Mridrika? Do you think you have learned on the job, or you have kind of personally taken an effort to keep yourself abreast with what is happening and where you want to move next?
Yeah. So I think most of my learning has happened on the job. But while you are in a specific job, given I told you about my journey, it was always very helpful to, keep learning about the industry trends while you were sort of entering something new. So every single job that I have taken up, it has been additive to my skill set. So I was an engineer, so I understood how systems talk to each other, how data flows between different systems. And so when I was consulting, it allowed me to sort of gather a lot more external facing skills, like negotiating with the clients, influencing them, their decision making, how to present a proposal, or make a presentation to a wider audience. And then when I came to Teach for India, it allowed me to sort of gather skills like networking, and making sure that you are connected with the high net worth individuals who you can reach out to when you are raising funds. And then in my current role, for the last 5 years, I've been learning ropes of, like, how to manage a P&L, to managing the marketing and the HR and the finance side of things. So every single sort of role has allowed me to learn a different facet or functional area of the business, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So as a piece of advice, I would totally agree with Trupti. I think one needs to be very self-aware as to what they are today, so that they can figure out what they want to be tomorrow. So yeah, Trupti, I agree with the philosophy. Thanks for sharing that.
Did you have any mentor or role model that you followed?
Oh, I have many actually. During my entire career, what I've consciously done is keeping my eyes and ears open. And so there was not this one person or one individual who has mentored me. Um uh, I feel that there are certain instances when mentor chooses you, and there are certain instances when mentees choose the mentor. So I think in my case, it has always been mentees choosing mentors. So I have done it a lot. I get drawn to people. I get drawn to people's characteristics, and when I feel that there is a lot to learn from so and so individual. So it can be maybe my superior. It can be a vendor stakeholder. It can be my subordinate. It can be somebody at home. It can be anywhere, as in it can be someone whom I've just met over maybe travel, during the travel. So I have been extremely cautious in keeping my eyes and ears open towards all the mentors that I had in my life. Yes, I depended a lot on books. I depended a lot on TikToks. I depended a lot on such kind of resources to get the mentorship. Uh, so yes, so I do consider all these resources and all these people as my mentor, but specifically a mentor who actually chose me for my first job. From that person, I really, really have learned a lot. As in, I really consider that's Mr. Agarwal. So who was the one, who recruited me for my first job. And somebody to get recruited in the first job, you as in you don't have any know-how of what you are going to be in that
Same
place.
place be molded, right?
Exactly. So it's all about what your attitude is. It's all about what you are as a personality. And rather than what's important is not that what you know at that point of time, but what you are capable of.
Right.
So even today, when I keep myself updated with the latest trends and technologies, but to be very frank, I never depend on that knowledge, because I don't think that gathering that a skill set and gathering that knowledge on a 24/7 basis can really is a sustainable way. So what I generally go for is having the right set of people around who are kind of guiding you for a certain set of problems, as in to achieve your short term and long term strategic goals. So I
Right.
don't depend solely on what I know. I make a point to rope in 10 different people from 10 different industries, and just help me. I am looking out for something like this. I feel this is right. What is your perspective on that? And I constantly try and learn from that. So
Open
it
to
may not be,
asking
yeah,
for help. What about you?
I ask for help like every now and then. I depend on that.
How about you, Shruti? Do you have a mentor? Or are you a mentor?
Specifically, do I have a mentor? Like Trupti said, it's not like one person. It's a range of resources and people and everything. From family, it could be someone in your family who you look up to. For me, it was also my dad, who was an entrepreneur, first generation entrepreneur. So it started with him, like someone to look up to, someone whose ideals were something that were hard to achieve, someone who, went against the grain of the community then to go like long time ago, it was like 40 years ago to start out. Right, starting up was not what it is today then, and without the safety nets that we have today. Right,
Right.
so it's not the capital and the job market and all of that was not as comfortable as it is today in that age. So definitely my dad has been a mentor for me, and then after now with social media I think it's quite easy, like with LinkedIn and Twitter and everything, to find the right things to resonate with, and then it sort of follows you, right? Like you like something and it follows you, so
Yeah.
I think it's a mixture of everything.
Yeah. Mritvika, talking about some risks and failures, would you like to share any such incident which has shaped your career right now, the way you are at your present?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is a running joke in my house which my mother always says, that I don't know what you do on a day-to-day basis, because from my education in engineering to what I'm doing now in the recruitment space, it's been a series of risks, and uh, each of the risks or each of the turning points have actually been extremely rewarding for me, because every role change has allowed me to gather knowledge about that specific field and that sector, and build relationships that have always stayed with me, whether I was in that particular role or job or not. So in terms of rewards, while you are taking a risk, I think my biggest reward has been the relationships that I've carried along, from one role to the other.
Seema, you have shared one of the risks that you had taken while changing jobs from consulting to an completely B2C kind of a role. Any other failures that you would like to highlight? Any particular challenges or risks that you would like to highlight?
It's not an easy one, because we don't want to talk about our failures. No, I'm kidding. But no, I think I wouldn't say has been any failure, or rather, I mean, it's a journey. I think what is important is to be able to trust in yourself to take that dip, take that risk. Because what I would say, what we women usually do is, whenever we see a job, we try to see if that does match 100% of your competencies, of our skills or not. We are not really, I mean, of course I would say all of you women have really taken that sort of plunge, but most of, for the message for those women out there, we try to match our skill set 100% to that job, and we think that we are not ready for it, because it requires something more. But which is where I would say that yes, it does not match, but I think we have acquired that in the previous position that you held, or even if you're a fresher, you're starting a new job, do trust in yourself, that capability to be able to learn on the job. And I think which we women do great. So it's really about, I had mentioned previously, that trust and confidence in yourself to take that. If you're passionate about it, go for it. So even though it would be something we feel it's crazy, but I think it's important to follow our passion. So every time we are doing things following our passion, so that's what I have done. I mean, living in France was not something we had imagined when we came to France. we thought like 2 years and maybe we are done. So it was really at that point where we were actually deciding to go back, because it's not an easy country to live. And but then here we are 10 years later, and I have a 4-year-old daughter, and like really we could imagine ourselves living living here, because it's been a journey, and we have taken that risk. But we did also do things like learning the culture, learning the language, that really incorporates and integrates into this. So I would say that yes, it's
Keep
important to
keep picking up your sock, pulling up your sock,
filling up our socks, and
back to work, and
don't be afraid. I think it's okay to fail, but we should not be like regretting later that we didn't even try. So I would definitely say that it's always there's no U-turn. You always make it's you discover a new road, and it's a journey. So it's important to keep trying and
enjoy
pushing
the
yourself
journey.
harder.
Yeah, enjoy. So, my question to you, Shruti, what makes what it takes to be an effective leader?
So I think it totally depends on your style, on the situation, what it demands. Uh, so I was just reading this book, and there's a lot of theories on it, right? So one of them said that it depends. There are two types of leaders, right? So people love to like divide the world up like all binary, but yeah, so this book said there are two types of leaders who like to be strategic, and leaders who like to be implementers, right? So um, then there was another thing which divvied up the world as leaders who like to who like to take decisions up front, you leaders who are collaborative. There's so many different theories and so many well-written books and well established, things out there. But I think it's just up to you. It's totally up to you. So my personal style is very collaborative. I like to take everybody along, and I like to say we did it. I've also seen people who are equally good at the job, who like to say that this is me, this is on me, we'll go ahead and we'll do this. But I think the most important thing is to own your decision, take people along, and move forward, and see that you're going ahead, right? Have a vision, work towards it, move forward. It does not, and take everybody along, be transparent, and own up. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. It's fine. Like it's very important to be yourself, be true to yourself, know who you are. Like some of the others here have said, truly be self-aware what your style is, make that work for you, be authentic, and move forward. So
Right. What
depends, totally depends on you.
yeah. What aspects of product management do you find most exciting and the least?
All right. So that's a really good question, right? So let me think about it. So I think there are a few things that really get me going about product management. So I love the early blank canvas days of anything, right? It could be a product, it could be a feature, it could be just a bug or an issue. So at that point, I love discovering more about the problem. I love brainstorming it with folks across teams. Say it could be design, it could be engineering, it could be the QA folks on your team. I love getting into these meetings, right? They're my favorite. I can almost feel some of the audience who are going to watch this cringing, right? I knew it. TMs love meetings, right? Well, that is true. But moving on, I also confess that I love some of the more boring bits of product management as well. Like, for example, so many years on as well, I still love writing the spec, right? So uh, that's like things which I love doing. What I love the least, right, and which are the interrupts, like the deviations from the plan for the quarter, the sprint. I've learned over time that these are inevitable, and it is at times at the cost. It comes like this is something that happens at the cost of the agility that the startups must have. They must possess in order to sprint forward. So yeah, so that's like some of the good and the bad. I can see Seema smiling and like, yeah, I get that, I truly get that. I vibe with that man.
Did you come across any
Okay.
scenario which required you to say no to a project or an idea?
I'm a product girl, Kinjal. That's part of the JD. But honestly, yes, saying no is a big part of a PM's job. Every quarter, every sprint, you have limited bandwidth. And it's not just the small projects you say no to, right, of which there are many, but also big, meaty features which you know will make an impact. But as
But
in
you
any, yep, you have to, but as in any good decision making process, I've learned quite the hard way. It's good to have a framework. Not that I've made an absolute science of it. It's not like I put something into an Excel sheet and spits out magically. Even though Seema, we should work on this. It's a really good product idea. Just put in something and we get something out. But yeah, I think frameworks help you think, and they help you think through it consistently. So you go back to it, and that is what you thought the previous time as well. And it also helps you communicate this decision better to stakeholders. And we know there are many of those as well. So it just helps you think through well. So I think pretty much you got to say no, but you got to say no in a consistent way.
That's from the product manager. Say no in a consistent way. Mridvika, how do you reconcile the key IT initiatives with the bottom line?
Yeah. So I think I mean for a lot of us, we've seen the importance of IT systems, IT processes, how they bring about efficiency, and how they sort of at the end of the day help us reduce cost, reduce the man hours that are required to do a certain job. And when you are able to reduce the cost, and when you are able to reduce the time taken to achieve efficiency, the bottom line obviously sort of gets impacted, because then you are able to sort of have cost savings across different facets on your budget. So I think investment in IT processes and IT systems at the right stage of an organization is extremely critical. And I have seen that happening in organizations when I was consulting them, and then being on the other side of the table as an entrepreneur, as working in startups, I have implemented them as well to sort of achieve the impact on the bottom line. So
Yeah. So, what has been the most profound executive decision you have ever made, Mritika?
being in a leadership position, you're taking multiple decisions through the day. But I think that the deepest one that has had impact on me has been through the pandemic, where as a startup you could go in either direction when it comes to preserving the company, or sort of keeping everyone on the ship. And I think one of the executive decisions that I did take, that actually gave us a lot of good results as Q3 picked up, was I was able to sort of retain every single person on the team despite being a recruitment business. And so this decision could have gone either way, right? Like, one could have decided to keep the entire team intact without having to let anyone go, and things would have not picked up, and the business would have gone down south. But I think I took the chance, and I took the gamble to sort of keep the team on board, and we saw that the entire team came together almost as a unit, to say we have to see ourselves through this storm on the other side of it, with every single one of us being on the ship. So I think that was the most profound decision I've taken in the recent times.
Interesting. Seema, uh, what type of culture do you think is needed for a digital transformation or innovation? You are doing here a lot of digital transformation journeys and adopting newer stuff. So, what kind of culture do you think is the best that has helped you all succeed in your transformation journey?
That's a great question. So I would say, like, people often, when we talk about transformation or digital transformation, they often confuse it with a tech transformation, just to say that, we will upgrade the tech or bring things and it will happen. But that's not really true, because it is really about the culture that you create around not isolating digital and putting it in a silo. It's really about upskilling everybody, all the functions, be it sales, be it marketing, be it supply. How do we really upskill each one of them to think about using leveraging digital in their day-to-day functions. And digital, to say, it's really about a new way of doing things. So you're reaching out consumers, where you're used to selling it in store, but now you're reaching out to new consumers, you're recruiting new consumers, or you're interacting with them in a new way. So it's really, what I would say is, that has been what I have learned. I mean, I would say one of the person that I really look up to, or mentor or role model, is Lubomira Roche. So she is the Chief Digital Officer at L'Oreal, and she has been in this role where she came in, and the role did not exist. So I have learned from her to say that it's not about saying that, okay, you do this and it happens. But what she learned was, it was all about really upskilling the people who are there in the current function, bring in new digital talent, but infusing it with people who are already there doing those functions, and how we enrich the culture about looking at things in different way, and starting to build the digital as part of the whole journey. And what we have done as well, like where our team's role is, we are the digital service and innovation role. So we know about, like, okay, you have to improve your sales at e-commerce, like you those objectives. But what we were doing was very different, because when we are talking about bringing services, it's about, like, it's not about selling your product anymore. It's really about women, for us, one of my major concerns is skincare. So we think about, okay, how do I make my choice? I don't know, there are so many things out there, I don't know how to make my choice, there's so many products. So we came about this idea with a simple, there is a need, women need help in about choosing the right products for me. And so the vision was about creating services where we augment our products along with these services. And that's what we are doing every single day. During pandemic, I would say, what the challenge we hit was this beauty experts that help you when you go to the store, give you advices, like, okay, I can tell you that this product looks good on you, or this looks, this is your skin looks dry, so choose this. They were not able to do that because the stores were closed, and the consumers are stuck online, and they were having a more difficult problem about, how do I make this choice? So I was working on a product which was, I would say, was not yet the product market fit, was allowing consumers to connect to a beauty expert online, like teleconsultation, like we are doing Zoom, but it was about bringing it to the consumers when they are shopping on our website, and bring it through the experts. So the real experts are brand experts. And so during pandemic, within 4 weeks, we actually brought the service, like created this experience which allowed the consumers, to connect to a beauty expert, do this live video. And not just that, we were also able to apply products like through the try-on technology. So you could, we are talking, and you're like, I want to find my foundation because that's really very complicated today, we don't know always our right shade. So these experts were able to see the consumers and do that. So I would say what has been keeping on moving in terms of the transformation is the shared vision. So what are we looking at? To be resilient, and to be really like going for that test and learn. It's okay to keep fail, but you have to have that big bets. So teleconsultation, for example, was a big bet for us. We did not know how it would go, but those are, like, I would say, the keywords, like take that big bet, and then bring everybody together. So it's a journey, and you say that we have this shared vision, and then we go forward with a sense of purpose, with a sense of belonging. And the transformation, it's like it starts a chain reaction or a fusion. So everybody is really constantly upskilled to improve themselves, and say the culture is very important. So for us at L'Oreal, it's like a big thing about like mindset and culture, and we love that.
Good. Trupti, have you noticed a lack of women in senior leadership roles in the tech teams? What is your take on it?
Certainly, that's a fact that we can't deny. That's how all across it seems like that. And yeah, the leadership is at the moment not that much. It's because it has to be a part of the culture of a particular organization. And to make it as part of a culture, there has to be a lot of efforts, and it has to be made as in there has to be a lot of drive towards that agenda at the organizational level. And when it is part of the agenda at the organizational level, yes, we will see the rise. And I think we can see that shift these days, the way, the diversity drives are being run by multiple organizations. And it's a conscious effort from their part. And with all of this, I think things will change in days to come. I'm also, it's not just on the part of organizations, but I'm also seeing a lot of women in the industry having the change in their mindsets also. So maybe earlier we were too conservative, and sometimes we have that habit of, especially the women have the habit of crossing the bridge before we come to it. But I think now we are becoming more and more adventurous in that. So there is no need to, take a backseat when it's not required. As in, let's go ahead and see, how the life is unfolding, and you just got to take those chances. And I think these days we are doing that. We are taking those chances. In all this, the support of the family also is a must, and not the cultural change, not at the organizational level, but also at your, the family front matters. And I can proudly say that I come from one of those families having that kind of a culture. Where it was, even though sometimes it has happened that I by choice have taken a back seat, and I felt that I think it's safer to do that. It's better to do that for the time being. But your family knows you, your colleagues know you, and they know what potential you have. You yourself know, but sometimes you need those people around you to push you, to push you out of the comfort zone. So I think with all of these efforts from all the angles, from self, from organization, at the family front, I think the situation is improving. I can really see that, as in the way things are changing. But at the moment, yes, I will say that it is less.
Yeah.
As in,
Because,
at the, maybe at the bottom of the pyramid, it's easier to implement it. But as you rise at towards the apex of the pyramid, it again you see that drop, to be very frank. So uh, a different kind of push is required for that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think yes, women in law. I mean, yes, there are one woman for every three lawyers. Uh, Women in medicine have been more, but when we talk about women adopting tech as a career, it has been like it is rising. Yes, we are very hopeful, but yes, it requires a push. Uh, what is your take, Mridvika? Do you think the culture at in the Indian society is different vis-a-vis you see culture in different advanced developed countries, or in general, women in tech have been on a slow rise compared to the other professions?
Yeah. No, I think the problem of this leaky bucket, which is the most prevalent term to describe that, when people get recruited straight out of campus, there are about there is about like 40 to 45% of representation of women in the workforce in the early career professional stage. And as your professional journey and your personal journey sort of both are speeding at the same speed, sometimes women particularly have to take a backseat because marriage happens, or you have kids, and sometimes it is the societal or the social fabric that doesn't allow, but I would say it is sometimes our own doing as well, because as one of you had pointed out the imposter syndrome, right? Like there have been several times through my career where uh, I chose not to sort of opt for a promotion or take that decision to move to the next level, because I thought it would have an impact on my really young infants. And so I think one of the things that I would encourage all of us, and that I try to do with all the women that I get to work with in my organization or otherwise, is to help them sort of overcome that imposter syndrome. If you've come to a certain stage, and if you have sort of been able to achieve certain things, it is because of all the hard work, and because of all the sacrifices that you've put through all these years, that have led you to come to a place where you are. So other than the societal and the social fabric of things around us, I would also encourage all of the women and the women leaders to sort of help others to overcome this imposter syndrome.
So Seema, you have been into tech industry with tech teams in India as well as in France. Um, what is is there any starking difference in the teams, the tech teams, the orientation or the way they work between India and France, or you think it is kind of similar?
So what I would say is, I would say in India, I think we are more women in tech when I compare to, in France. So it's striking. But yeah, I would say that's a good news for India that we are, pushing that. But I think I really appreciated the way Ritvika put it, because many times we women, take it that back step about not prioritizing our career, and which is, I think, more prevalent in India when I compare to like the culture, not in generally with tech, but in professional women in France. The fact is like, being a mother, like the motherhood doesn't really, put a break in terms of their priorities professionally. So this, I would say, is a really something that I learned and I appreciated, because yes, bringing a kid, growing your family is equally enriching. But if you are a professional and you are really doing passionate about your work, there is no harm to take a break. But do not think that that break is forever. It's really about being confident to come back, and we all have a place. It's really taking that place, which is important. So I would say women here, they do take their breaks, but they do not put their career on the back burner, saying that, I have now become a mother, and my children need me, and then I would really sacrifice my career. So I would say that is where I think the balance becomes unequal. And I don't think that we should blame the men, because it's really us women who do not prioritize ourselves. And back when I have friends who have done that, and when I ask them, they are like, I don't know, I feel like I sometimes for their husbands' careers or things like that, they try to did not come back to their professional working experience before, but after having kid. And they still feel regretted about it, because they're like, why did I, why, when can I restart? So I would say, definitely it's really important to restart. And the tech scene here, honestly, I mean, as coming from outside, the first thing I did was to observe how are things working here, and versus when the things are in India. Definitely, we Indians are coming with that openness about trying to fit in. So we always take our time to see how the things are, and then find your place and bring the knowledge and the experience that you have gained. So that is what I have done in every place that I have been. I've taken the time to understand how things are done, and then put your point about how you feel that based on my previous experience, things can be improved. And the tech scene here, I would say honestly, I was not really part of a startup directly working, or a tech company, because I have been part of, for example, at LVMH, we are a fashion luxury brand. And then at L'Oreal, we are now becoming like a beauty tech company. Of course, we have our own tech teams, but I'm not part of in directly the tech team, but more as a product. So there, I would say, comparing to when I was at Celine or at L'Oreal, I am fortunate to work with so many women, because the workforce is really like, there is an imbalance. I would say more women versus men, because of course L'Oreal being a marketing first and product first company, you have a lot of women who are there. And in same at luxury fashion, you had a lot of women. So I was like, okay, it's so nice to be around women, versus when you are used to in India, like being like maybe 20% women versus in tech, I mean 20 to 30% to 70% men. It's a welcome change.
Yeah, yeah. Shruti, what new opportunities do you see lying ahead for more women who get involved in technical roles?
Adding to some things that people have said, right? The opportunities are there for everybody, but more fundamental, I think it is not. It's not just giving opportunities at an org level or at a society level. All of that is very important. But I really like the concept that Sheryl Sandberg talks about in Lean In, where she says there is a leadership ambition gap, right? Where she says that from the beginning, the boys and the girls are conditioned differently, right? She says that from the beginning, women are told, uh, directly or indirectly, right, that someday you will have kids, someday you will get married, and that someday you will have to, you know, do that. Right? So from the beginning, the ambition for a career is is very skewed towards boys as compared to girls. I think the opportunities are there. Like the tech industry is waiting to bloom and flourish, and that is there for a boy or a girl, right? But how we raise our children, right? That I think that's where we begin as a society, as a whole society, right? Two parents raising a child is a different thing, but as a whole society, we need to raise our girls and boys better to know that everybody contributes to everything in society, right? So if I think we have to handle it at that level, and then the opportunities are right for the take.
Right. Any piece of advice for the young women, Trupti, that you would like to add? And what do you think? Any last piece of advice is that you would like to add?
I feel that not just we women, but everybody in career, at home, everywhere, we need help. Because to have a successful career, to have a successful life, it's an entire show to manage. So it's not something that, you are a solo performer always. It doesn't happen like that. To have enjoyable, as in one can, enjoy one can enjoy that the focus on you, or another person can enjoy the beauty of the entire show. So to have that a beautiful show in professional life or in your personal life, it's an entire orchestra, so it's not just you. So learn to play all the instruments, learn to take everybody along, take help wherever required. You as a person need support in all aspects, so please don't be shy in taking the support. Ask for help, and because without support you can't do it. Because everybody is the way of coping for stress, the mechanism of handling things, or multiple deadlines together, or decision anxiety on a day-to-day basis. So it be it strategic decision, or something like what to cook for breakfast or lunch or dinner, all sorts of anxieties we go through on a daily basis. So to to be successful at anything, eventually success is something, you're feeling happy about something. So I'm not going to measure it in terms of maybe fame, money, position, as in so success, the terminology success means that you are happy doing something that you are, So for that, there is a huge amount of emotional intelligence that one is supposed to have. So that's my advice to people. Work on that emotional intelligence, because the 70-80% of the failure that one feels, that if I feel that I've failed in something, if I feel that I'm not able to really contribute to my role, if I feel that I've not been looked at as a good leader, 80% of the issue lies in here. Actually, it's all about what you are engineering your mindset, how you are, emotionally evolved to deal with people. Because most of the times we feel unhappy, we are not able to cope up to the multiple responsibilities and the juggling priorities, is because um, you have not balanced yourself. A lot of work has to go in balancing yourself. So that's my advice to the young women, because we get overwhelmed very fast. We feel that the onus lies on me. If I don't do something, the world is going to collapse or the sky is going to fall. It's just not that. The world is going to perfectly run without you. So even in any career, I feel that if one wants to have a good career in the leadership role, or one wants to have a good career in technology, I think one should be very comfortable in withdrawing, as in being invisible. I think I need to explain it a bit here. Uh, the thing is that the more minimalism, the more easiness, the more fluid your solutions are, the more convenience that you put forth in your solutions, the better the chances of success. So let's not focus on what you feel, what you want to say, what you want. One needs to be taking a step back and giving more focus to the larger goal. According to me, that's the key to success. Please stop giving unnecessary importance to yourself. Focus on what is the goal. That's what I feel takes you to success faster. As it will take, if you're trying to grab the limelight, it doesn't help in the long run.
Mridvika, you want to add to it and the concluding note?
Sure. Everything that Trupti has said, I was nodding along because I agree with everything that you said. I think one last piece that I would add, which has helped me constantly, is be in the front row of your career, like all the time. Which means that you have to be the one to spot growth opportunities when they present themselves, because they are the ones that will be that will shape your career. They will, and you will know that they are the key learning opportunities, because you will feel uncomfortable when they would be presented in front of you, and your initial impulse would be that maybe you're not ready. But one thing that I've known is that growth and comfort, they never coexist. They somehow always are at odds. So always take on new challenges and say more yeses than no's in your career.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. On that concluding note, what we agree, technology isn't scary. We all started with being a programmer or a non-programmer, software engineer, developer, and we have evolved into a business, into a leadership roles, or into roles where we are enabling businesses and solving day-to-day problems with technology. Being a woman in tech do not have to be confined by those definitions or profiles of technology. You can grow, evolve, and learn from the business aspect as well. To have a successful and satisfying career, I think the prerequisites are eagerness to solve problems and have a confident headspace. Just pick up those opportunities, try and gain things, pull up your socks, do your decisions every day, have the grit to follow it. And knowing the critical business pain areas and solving it with computational thinking are the just key elements that will help women have their journey through a tech industry or a tech career. And that's exactly the message that Drona HQ is giving. Coding or no coding, achieve digital solutions. for your organization at Speed. I think that's the end of, I'll wrap it up, end of a wonderful panel. I think we took way too much time for your discussion, and I would love to thank you once again for coming up, sharing your experiences, sharing your profound knowledge that you have gained over years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kinjal, for inviting me, and it's
you.
been wonderful spending time on a Saturday afternoon with all of you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Absolute
Thank you
pleasure.
so
Thank
much.
you so
Yeah, same here. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you, Kinjal. I think
Yes.
this gave us an opportunity to connect to these wonderful ladies.